Welcome into episode 210 of the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball and recruiting podcast on the growing KSR Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Pilgrim of Kentucky Sports Radio, joined once again by the one and only Shawn Smith of Go Big Blue Country. Shawn, how the heck are you?
I am fantastic, Jack Pilgrim. How are you?
Oh, just dandy, just peachy, having a great old time, especially now that we have my guy, very special guest, Will Martin, head coach of the Missouri Western State Griffins. Will, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, just grateful to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So it's a big day for you and your program as Kentucky releases its official 2022-2023 basketball schedule. And right there at the top of the list is you guys. How excited were you to kind of get this announcement out of the way and kind of put your all's program on the spotlight that it deserves?
Yeah, we're super excited, but I think it's overshadowed by just the humility and gratefulness that we have to be able to play this game. And there's the obvious storylines. You know, I worked at Kentucky for 4 years. I was a student assistant manager, and I hired two former players in John Hood and Perry Stevenson. But if I learned anything from Coach Cal during my time, is it's all about the players. So, you know, I'm just really stoked for our kids and the platform that this will provide them, and grateful that Coach Cal and the University of Kentucky made this happen.
Well, we're obviously going to get into the nitty gritty, your time at Kentucky, some of your favorite moments, winning a national championship there in Lexington. So we're excited about all of that stuff. But just how did this game get put together? We're very interested to see how kind of the behind the scenes stories, those first calls with Coach Cal, and how this thing got scheduled.
I had a little bit of naivety. I think I have to credit that, just persistence and keep asking Coach Cal and the people over at Kentucky. I never really thought that it would actually materialize into anything. But as soon as I became the head coach, I reached out and said, we'd love to play you all, obviously, and then just stayed at it. And Coach Cal did a phenomenal job of responding back and trying to fit something into their schedule. And, obviously now that we have Perry and John, it kind of increase the opportunity, I believe, for both sides, hopefully, and just super stoked that we were able to make it happen this year.
Will, what are some things that you're looking forward to most about being back at Rupp Arena?
It's going to be emotional for me. You think about it. I've wiped up sweat there for 4 years, and when you do that, you never imagine yourself actually getting to coach there. So, I know I've overused the word humility, but that's the emotion that I feel, and it's going to be amplified when I'm there. But again, just to be able to see my guys play in Rupp Arena in front of the fan base at Kentucky, and to be able to experience that, I think that's what's going to make me the most emotional, is for our players.
And when it comes to philosophy and concepts and things that you teach, how much of what you learned under John Calipari do you apply to your career and your coaching and your teaching?
Yeah, I always say that all of us are products of the people who first invested in us, and Coach Cal invested very heavily in me and all of our managers, just like he does his players. And so a lot of who I am as a leader, a lot of who I am as a head coach, even concepts on the floor are directly correlated to what I learned from Coach Cal. But the main thing is putting players first and being a servant leader. Coach Cal is out there on stuff like that. I wish people knew on the inside just how real and authentic that is. I mean, I've never been around a human being that, really seeks to serve at a higher level and a deeper level than Coach Cal. And he instilled that in all of us. He instilled a servant leadership attitude, to put yourself second, to put yourself last, and put others first. And that's how I try to lead in this program. We try to put our players first. We try to teach our players to put the community first. And, that's probably the greatest gift that Coach Cal gave me.
Will, I mean, just your story is fascinating. Just from a basketball perspective, you go from kind of just working your way up the totem pole, going from basketball manager, like you said, wiping sweat off the floor, working your way up to being a Division II coach, returning to Rupp Arena. Just kind of tell our listeners what that journey was like and how you got to the position that you're in right now.
Yeah, it's a grind, but I'm privileged because of my contacts at Kentucky. They were behind me every step of the way. Being a graduate assistant at Tulsa and working for Danny Manning, going out to San Francisco and being a director of ops for Rex Walters. We get fired in San Francisco and go back home, and I'm a a volunteer coach at my high school. I'm training kids for free in Nashville, and everybody at Kentucky was always so supportive of me, regardless of where I was. And that empowered me and gave me a confidence to keep moving forward, and got an opportunity to be a D2 assistant. And it just worked out that the head coach that I work for here, Sundance Wicks, one of my best friends in the world, he took an assistant job at Wyoming, and they promoted me. So all of that is credit to the people who've invested in me. It's Coach Cal, it's guys like Kenny Payne and Orlando Antigua and people back at Kentucky that really invested in me and gave me that confidence.
Is there a special sauce or something with being a Kentucky basketball manager? You look at Travis Brano, who's one of my good buddies as well. He does the same thing, and he kind of uses that platform to, jump into being one of the most trusted insiders in the college basketball recruiting world. So what is it in the special sauce there in Lexington that leads to, manager status all the way up to, these such big heights?
Well, I mean, I think that when you see La Familia, it looks like good clickbait, but that's real. Like we're a true family, and we look out for each other. And I look at the guys that I was a manager with. Mark Evans, he's still working at Kentucky. Will Barton, still working at Kentucky, doing great things. Brett Miller, who was an assistant at Kentucky Wesleyan for a while, and then decided to go to the Dominican Republic and do ministry in sports. And all of us are connected. Chad Sanders was there and was a huge mentor to me when I was a freshman manager, and now he's the GM of the Toronto Raptors G League team. And so one, I think that it's having that platform that you all are talking about. Like, there's no doubt about that, being connected with that, but also the authentic relationship and connection that everyone builds at Kentucky. It really allows you to move that forward.
Your coaching staff you filled, with two kind of big name guys, Perry Stevenson, John Hood. Kentucky fans are obviously very familiar with. How did those conversations get started? I know you're obviously familiar with them during your time there, but what led to those two people in particular where you said, those are my guys, I got to get them on my staff?
Well, I have to say, man, I said earlier that Coach Cal really instilled in us taking care of the players. And when I was a manager at Kentucky, I mean, that was the main focus. I had other jobs, obviously, but I knew that Coach Cal wanted me to make sure that I was taking care of the guys. And so when I became a head coach, that was still there, it's deep in my subconscious. So it was an easy call. I knew both those guys were looking to get into coaching. Coach Hood was actually a volunteer at Kentucky Wesleyan, so I knew he already had his foot in the door. And it was a no-brainer for Mo West. I mean, think about it, two guys that have played at a high level. They know the game extremely well. Both of them have been tremendous on the court and off the court. And if we're trying to build a culture of player first, but also having the type of success, at least at this level, that Coach Cal in Kentucky's been able to have, what better than to bring in guys who actually played for Coach Cal and played within that culture? It's one thing for me when I'm getting on the guys and saying, hey, this is what it was like at Kentucky. And they're looking at me like, all right, cool, coach, but you were the towel boy. You were doing Coach Cal's laundry. When Coach Hood and Coach Stevenson say it, has a little bit more of a pack to it. So I think it's great for our guys, and it's a great vantage point for them to kind of to learn from.
Well, the season starts with you guys after the Blue-White game and Big Blue Madness. You're right there at the top of the schedule. What do fans need to know about the Griffs when they come to Rupp Arena?
Well, our whole mission is to kind of block out distractions. So that's what's going to be great, is that there's no bigger distraction than going into Rupp Arena, and there's going to be lights that these guys have never played under. There's going to be media outlets that they've never experienced. There's going to be fans, and I hope BBN heckles them while they're on the floor so they get that experience. Hopefully they're okay to me, John, and Perry. But, I hope that they see a team that's resilient. I hope that people see a team that responds well to adversity. Obviously, we're going to be outmatched in that game. I hope that people see that we're still looking to get to reads. We're connected. We're playing together, and we're a team that respects the game. Those things are the most important to me. When we walk out of that gym, I hope that, you have 20,000 people who forget about Missouri Western, but I hope for at least 30 minutes or 45 minutes of their night when they're driving home, they're like, that team's connected. They love each other and they play hard.
And Coach, I don't know if you've turned on the tape of Kentucky yet, but if you have, what stands out to you and what do you see?
Well, Coach Hood's been scouting, so he's been watching the Bahamas game. I'm like, you're crazy, man. I'm not even getting into that right now. I got enough stressors. We had a terrible practice today. I don't want to watch film of Oscar Tshiebwe. That would just give me nightmares. Look, this is what I know about Coach Cal's team. They're gonna play well together. They're gonna be extremely fast. They're gonna be great in the gaps. They're gonna rebound the heck out of the ball. They're gonna have great spacing on the floor, and that's gonna be challenges for us. And so I'm excited. I'm excited for our guys. I hope that we can, make it worth Kentucky's while. I hope that both teams walk away from that game, from their own vantage point, saying, "Look, we got better because of this game."
Yeah.
Personnel wise, who do we need to be keeping a close eye on with the Griffs? Is there a
Don't even put me in that position, because my guys are going to be watching this. And look, I hope that people are like, that is a connected team. That's a team that shares the ball. That's a team that knows how to space on the floor. They know how to cut. They know how to screen. I think there's going to be a few guys that are able to impress. I'll say this, like, no one understands this level. And when I got the assistant coaching job, I had people from Tulsa and San Francisco. Obviously, Kentucky's on a whole nother level. But they said, Will, you can't recruit like you're at a D2. You have to recruit like you're still at Tulsa or San Francisco. And I had never coached the D2 level. So I thought, man, that's crazy. This league that we play in MIAA, it's good athletes, good coaches, kids that know how to play, kids that shoot the ball extremely well. And so what I hope is that when we walk away from that game, people are saying, wow, that's a great league. The MIAA must be a great league at the D2 level. D2 basketball, man, there's some really good talent there.
You've mastered the coach speak from Coach Cal for sure. At minimum, not singling out any players that to keep a close eye. Let's go down memory lane. Just going down some of the teams that you've been a part of, the 2012 championship team, the John Wall first year, John Calipari. What are some of your favorite memories during your time in Lexington?
That first year team was just surreal for everyone. The energy that they brought back to Kentucky was unbelievable. I'll say all the time, some people might get mad at me, but I've never seen somebody with a greater competitive fire than John Wall. Those practices were intense. Our pickup games were intense, and it was really led by him. And everybody rose to that level. But I think that all of the fans felt that energy from John Wall. It wasn't just his performance on the floor, but it was the energy that he brought, and that was exciting for everyone. That next year, I think that a lot of people, didn't even expect us to make it to a Final Four, and that team stood together and fought hard. Brandon Knight, look, I've never been around an individual, not just basketball. Like, hear me on, not just basketball. I've never been around an individual at any level that works harder than Brandon Knight, and that was amazing to be a part of that team. And I could go down the list of the players. I don't want to leave anyone out, but then you talk about that next year when we win the national championship. What a selfless team, and I know Coach Cal talks about it, but it happened. It was real when Anthony Davis, who's one of my best friends, walks into the locker room at halftime, and he's like 1 for 7 or 1 for 8, and he's like, "Hey guys, bro, like, I'm not making nothing. I'm going to block shots. I'm going to rebound. I'm going to impact the game defensively. I'm going to get you guys shots, knock them down." And Duran Lamb had a game out of his mind. Darius played a good game. MKG played a good game. And that team all year was just so selfless. And what I'm proud of, and, it's humbling for me, is that I felt like it was from the top down, which I think has allowed me to have the success that I've had later in my life. I mean, I walked in every single day as a manager, and I was driven towards the mission of the team. I feel like everybody, you talk about our entire managerial staff, everybody on the coaching staff, our video coordinators, everybody was bought into winning a championship and doing it the right way. And there was no ego. And I always talk about that team with my players, because everyone's like, man, Anthony Davis, what a great player. MKG, Marcus Teague, Darius Miller. Of course, they were phenomenal players. There's no doubt. But that team was selfless. That team played for each other. That staff worked for each other. And there was a hyper-focused vision on that team that I've never been a part of since. And that's kind of the goal to strive towards. And so unbelievable run. I'm just sitting here talking out loud. I never really think about it much, going from that J-Wall year to an Elite Eight, a Final Four, and then winning a national championship my senior year at Kentucky is pretty phenomenal.
But that 3-year stretch before that was the last year of Billy G, your first year at Kentucky. I mean, that transition from, that coach to this current coach, just what was that process like? I mean, that's one of the most polarizing topics in Kentucky basketball history, really, just kind of the falling out of Billy G and then kind of the welcoming in of Coach Cal and everything that's happened since then. Just what was that transition period like, and kind of the night and day difference between just the overall success of the program?
Well, I'll say this: I'll always be grateful to Billy Gillespie because he gave me a shot. If it wasn't for Billy Gillespie, I never would have had an opportunity to be a manager for Coach Cal. So super grateful for that opportunity. And I'll say that I became a much tougher individual because of the year that I spent working for Coach G and his staff. And there were a lot of positive values that I was able to implement that I still implement to this day. So, I'll always be grateful to Coach and him giving me an opportunity. But I think, what Coach Cal did when he came in is unparalleled. I think he's the best coach in college basketball. I think he's one of the best human beings in college basketball. I think that what he's been able to do at every level is unique. He's always ahead of the curve. And to be able to lead a program like that at that level and consistently put players first, it's no one's done that.
Thinking back to that transition period, one of the biggest topics during that time was the decision of Jody Meeks and what that would have done for that 2009-2010 team. You were behind the scenes there. How close was Jody to coming back, and would Kentucky have won it all if he had?
Yes, and I'm because of Coach Cal, I am very careful with my words, but we would have won the national championship. There's no doubt. And Jody's my guy. I love him to death. He made a decision, and he had a great NBA career. But there's no doubt. There's no doubt we would have won. I thought West Virginia did a good job in their zone in the Elite Eight. But you talk about a zone buster, Jody Meeks. Like we wouldn't have had any issues behind three to start off that game if Jody Meeks was on that roster.
Oh, makes me sick just to think about it. It's my favorite team of all time, the 2009-2010 team. So it's crushing to hear just the what could have been part of it. All right, I'm putting you on the spot. Best player that you've seen during your time at Kentucky, because there were that stretch in particular. There was several of them that are in the conversation.
Anthony Davis.
And why is that?
He impacted the game on every level. And like you said, I mean, there's been so many greats. It's not a knock at anyone else, but AD was just different, and his mindset was different. His approach to every single practice, every single film session, every single game, no matter who we were playing, he had a different mindset. He's a 1%er, as a human being and as a performer now and as an NBA player, but also during his time at Kentucky. He's able to impact the game, just like I provided the example during the national championship. He wasn't scoring the ball, and he still impacted that game, just as much, if not more, than anybody else on the floor. And everybody knew it. Everybody knew that. The Kansas players knew that. Every fan in the stands knew that, and everybody watching knew that. Every scout knew that. He's different. He's still different, and he's going to have a phenomenal year this year for the Lakers. I think AD has an opportunity to really be one of the best players anyone's ever seen in this generation. I truly believe that.
Most underrated player that you've come across in your time in Lexington?
Underrated. I'll say this, and I was actually talking about this the other day. Deron Lamb, what he was able to do, I think sometimes gets overshadowed by some others. He was a guy that we could really count on to make a bucket and knock down a three, and was a much better defender than what he might get credit for. So I'd probably go Deron Lamb. Darius Miller is up there, but, everybody shows Darius loves and appreciates Darius. But he's a guy that stayed 4 years. There's no way we would have won the national championship his senior year if it wasn't for his leadership and his stability.
The last question for me, Shawn, I don't know if you have anything else. Just one behind-the-scenes story from John Calipari during your time there that that you don't know of has been kind of shared to the public in recent years.
Yeah, I love sharing this. When it was like his first couple of weeks on the job, and we as managers were kind of in limbo. We didn't know if we were going to be retained by the staff or not. We'd gone through a few workouts, and he invited us all over to his house, and we were all talking like, man, he's going to tell us that, thanks for your service, but we're no longer going to have you as a part of Kentucky basketball. And we get to his house, and he comes out we sit down in his living room. He comes out with a huge platter of ribeye steaks, and he literally serves us. And he talks in that dinner about servant leadership and what that means, and how he wanted to invest in us so that we could give back to the players and the staff and the community in Lexington. And I'm telling you, like, I'll get emotional. I promise I wouldn't. But I tear up every time I think about that, because it changed my life. It changed how I perceived leadership. It changed how I perceived service. And it changed my life for the better. It's why I lead the way that I do. It's why I coach the way that I do. So not really a funny story, but a very impactful and meaningful story that some people might not know that really impacted me in my life.
Well, absolutely fascinating stuff. Shawn, do you have anything else before we get Will out of here?
No, I was going to ask him is, we know that Cal also says a lot of funny things. And is there anything that you've picked up on that maybe you've caught yourself repeating that you heard him say?
It's a funny question, because my staff, now that I have a staff that played for him, I do stuff without realizing it. Like I don't even realize that I'm doing it. And they say, man, that's so Coach Cal. I think I was getting on a player the other day for react. We talk about responding instead of reacting, and reactions are typically bad and responses are typically good. And sometimes we'll do the palms up when we don't get a foul or something like that. And I started kind of like doing some baby imitations, like, well, I'm tired. Look at me. And John Hood started cracking up, had to leave practice. And after practice, we had a staff meeting. He's like, Coach, I'm so sorry that I left. I was crying so hard because you sounded just like Coach Cal, and I didn't even realize it. So one thing Coach Cal would always do is, like, if somebody was mopey or in a mood, he'd be like, I'm mad. Why? I'm mad. And so I do that a lot. Like when our guys are mopey or they're in a bad mood, I'd be like, look at me, I'm mad. And that's vantage point, Coach Cal. He always used to say, like, reach out with two hands, and he would be like, look, here, it's the same thing, because everyone always thinks that they have more reach with one hand. And I'll catch myself doing that a lot in huddles, like when we're not going after the ball with two hands. And our media people caught me one time, and I sent it to some of our former players at Kentucky and staff members, because I didn't even realize I was doing it. But that's quintessential Coach Cal.
Well, man, your story is fascinating, and we're very excited to bring you back to Lexington. It's going to be an awesome homecoming, and we're excited to come see you when you get here.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm super, super humbled and grateful.
Yep. All right, well, appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you guys.
That's good stuff.
Shawn, man, that was a blast. I think listeners are definitely going to appreciate that one.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that this program, you see that how it helps not just the guys that are on the floor that are going to the NBA, but the impact and everything that this program has become over the last 12 to 13 years, how it helps in other ways too. And that's a branch of John Calipari right there that is just going to continue to extend throughout another 2 or 3 decades of college basketball.
And his story that he told about the decision that Cal had when he first got there to say, no, we're retaining you guys, and here's why this is such an important thing. Like, it's little things like that would never get back to Cal. Like, that's not something that Cal probably even remembers that he did at this point. However many years later, it's been 14 plus years later. It's just little things like that just kind of make you take a step back and realize, like, man, this. It goes deeper than just X's and O's. It goes deeper than basketball, and it's. I thought that part was pretty cool.
Yeah, and just the wisdom that comes from that job, and you're working. And how many times do we get to Rupp Arena for a game, and we're there an hour and a half before tip off, or even sooner than that, and it's a student manager that is out there working out these players, getting them ready. I remember Tyler Hero, and it was Randy Gregory, and those guys working out there like it. Those guys are so beneficial to the success of this program, and not just this program, but beneficial to all programs across college basketball. So it's really cool when you get to hear stories like this and how they have their own program now, and those philosophies, those concepts and things that John Calipari taught are still being taught in a different program at an even different level of basketball. That's really cool.
Yeah, like I said to him, I don't know if there's something in the water when you're a manager here at Kentucky, because with Travis Branham getting the role that he has now at 247 Sports, and Will, and plenty of other managers, that it's a stepping stool into something greater, and it's cool seeing them all kind of embrace those roles that they've gotten and thrive the way that they have. I think that's pretty cool. But the reason why we brought Will on in the first place is to talk Kentucky basketball's 2022-2023 schedule that gets announced today, Shawn. Something that we've been waiting weeks and weeks and months for. They kind of did a slow trickle, release of them, one game at a time, and we've been just waiting anxiously to get the full release, all the names, with the locations, the tip-off times, where they are on the TV, all that stuff. It is finally out. So let's just get rolling at the top. What do you think of the release of the schedule today?
I like the schedule. I do. I love that the date with Gonzaga is confirmed. I like that it's the time slot it's in there on a Sunday night on ESPN. It kind of gives us that 24-hour window to recover and get over whatever happens between Kentucky and Georgia in football, and then you get Kentucky-Gonzaga in basketball to cap off a weekend. I like the schedule. I really do, from top to bottom. I like what they did with the exhibitions. Obviously, we talked about Missouri Western. I like Kentucky State. They're coming to Rupp Arena as well. And then you get those 2 dates there early between Howard and Duquesne before you really get into the meat of the schedule there with Michigan State. But a lot to like. I like the non-conference. The SEC schedule is going to be challenging. It's going to be a schedule that is loaded with quad one opportunities and resume building opportunities for Kentucky.
Yeah, and I don't want to gloss over the exhibition. We talked with Will about obviously Missouri Western and John Hood coming back, Perry Stevenson coming back. That part's cool, but underrated part of the Kentucky State exhibition, Chris Livingston's brother Cordell, twin brother, it actually signed on this year as a freshman to play for the Thoroughbreds. I think that part's really cool, and that kind of extends beyond going into recruiting, where they treat these kids as actual humans, and make it a like, hey, I know how much value your brother brings and how much he means to you. Let's add them onto the schedule and make sure that you get that moment on the floor with him. Little things like that nobody's going to remember in 3-4 years who Kentucky played in the exhibition slate this season. But it's little things like that Chris Livingston will remember that moment for the rest of his life. He's going to be able to play his twin brother at Rupp Arena for the first time, probably the only time ever in his career. They played together in high school, obviously grew up, they're twin brothers. But they now get that opportunity. It's going to be a lifelong memory for that family in particular. And it's little things like that I really appreciate. And I didn't want to gloss that part over. I think it's going to be really cool to see the Livingston twins take the floor against each other at Rupp.
So looking at these non-conference dates, give me the 2 you're the most excited about. Because we're talking Gonzaga, Kansas, Louisville. Obviously, I think Gonzaga has to be up there because that meeting just doesn't happen. And then seeing it, next year at Rupp Arena this year, I know it's a neutral site game, but it's out there in Gonzaga. So, just which 2 are you looking at the most? We get to see them play Michigan State all the time. We see them play Louisville. You got the game in London with Michigan.
Gotta be. Yeah. I'm excited for the London game, but I think the meaning behind that game, I think the excitement has kind of died down a little bit of what that game is. And, when you get I think Gonzaga kind of overshadowed what that game, the London game, meant. And
COVID changed that schedule so much too that you kind of thought what was going to be sooner than now and what it is now, but it's still a good matchup. But more exciting matchup if that's a home and home. If you're going to Michigan like the way they were supposed to, or they're coming to Rupp Arena. But I think it's Gonzaga and Kansas, and then you obviously got to throw Louisville in there as well, being at Rupp Arena.
And I know that there's a lot of talk. The home schedule isn't strong enough. Every game needs to be a top 25 team, things like that. But this roster for this schedule from top to bottom, there's a lot of intrigue across the board. You get the storyline matchups with the exhibition games. You get 11 teams coming off NCAA tournament appearances. You talked about, the quad one opportunities. There's going to be a ton of those. But, I mean, you can get into the nitty-gritty of Yale, who is an NCAA tournament team this past year that Kentucky hasn't played before. I think they might have played once before. But they could have chosen that game to be another North Florida or another, fill in the blank team like that, another Duquesne. You need those type of schools on the schedule. But I appreciated that they went out and they got a Yale. And, it's kind of in Bellarmine being the other one who, they won the ASUN last year, and they would have been in the NCAA tournament had there not been, the stupid eligibility rules when you're making the jump from D2 to D1. That's an NCAA tournament team. They may not officially be, but they won their conference tournament. That's an NCAA team too. I think when you add in those type of names, the in-state programs, things like that, I think that makes the schedule from top to bottom much more enjoyable. Where you're not going to get those, November Wednesday games where you're just sitting there going, why am I here at Rupp Arena at 9:00 at night, watching fill in the blank, some mid-major that nobody cares about. You get some real name brand opponents that I really appreciate.
And I love the location of the Florida A&M game there. I know it's the Unity Series that Kentucky's a part of there. I like where it's at because it kind of bridges that gap from where you've been going through the Michigan, UCLA, you've had Gonzaga, Michigan State there earlier in the season, but then you get that date before you jump into conference play and then right back out of conference play on New Year's Eve to host Louisville. So a lot of exciting games there before you even get into league play.
And Sean, get this. I went through and looked at the numbers of the teams Kentucky's playing this year. 12 of the 26 teams on the schedule finish inside the top 50 of the final net rankings. 19 of the 26 inside the top 150. Kentucky, who plays 7 teams ranked in the final AP or coaches polls last season. I mean, that's a juggernaut of a schedule right there. I mean, you're not going to get from top to bottom. You get the name recognition, you get the storyline intrigue, and then just the overall talent from top to bottom. The SEC, I don't think it's going to be as talented as it has been in recent years, but it's still a damn good league. And I think just from top to bottom, the schedule, it's going to be a tough one. It's not going to be one that Kentucky coasts through and wins every game by 50 points.
And I want to make sure we get to that question that popped up a minute ago. Somebody asked a question about how long the contract is with the CBS Sports Classic. That goes through 2026. So it just actually got extended this summer.
What do you think of that? Because I personally, if there's one schedule change that I would be open to, I think I like the opponents especially North Carolina, obviously, and even sometimes UCLA. But I definitely think that series would probably be better suited as a home and home. What do you think?
I would love to see that return to a home and home with Kentucky and North Carolina, and even like you said, Kentucky, UCLA. We've seen that be a home and home. That's the thing that's the thing that I would like about that. Just get away from those and to those dates. So that one is a little bit sooner. I think it's December 17th this year. We've seen that thing be as late as the 21st, 22nd of December, and it's so close to the holidays that the crowds weren't as good. I was in Chicago, I think 18 when they played Carolina, and it wasn't as good of a crowd. But I'm okay with it for now, but I'd love to see them move away from that when you get to 25, 26, whenever this contract is up, and start doing more home and homes with a Carolina, with a UCLA. Keep Gonzaga on the schedule. If it becomes if you like the next 2 years and what they're doing, just keep them on the schedule, or whoever the hot team is in college basketball, go do a home and home with them. I think that is more appealing to the fans than to go to New Orleans, to Chicago, to New York, wherever they're going, and just watching neutral site games against UCLA and then getting a game with Carolina, Ohio State. I just think that there's so much more meaning to it if it's on campus. And I think even fans would enjoy seeing Kentucky go to some of these road venues and play too.
Brian Stewart, great question. Which player from the non-conference schedule are you most interested in seeing? I think that's an awesome question.
Man,
Got to go Drew Timme.
I was going to say Drew Timme. I got to see Drew Timme because of all the surrounding with
Timme time, baby.
Yeah, Timme time and everything with the edits in Kentucky jerseys and stuff from back in the spring and summer. Because somebody's going to ask about that leading up to that game. But no, I think getting to see guys that you don't really get to see a lot against your favorite team. Like we don't get to see matchups with Kentucky-Gonzaga. I want to see Drew Timme against Kentucky and against Oscar Tshiebwe.
Yeah, and now that we're several months past and he's clearly not going to end up at Kentucky, I will say those conversations weren't like totally out of the realm of possibility. Like the reason why those conversations started, they were out in California together at, I believe it was it the Wooden or the Naismith?
Wooden, I think.
It was for the Wooden Player of the Year award. They were out there together and they just kind of clicked. The two players clicked and they just kind of started talking about the possibility of, hey, how crazy would it be if the two most dominant front court players in college basketball teamed up? Like that was a very real thing. And, I think when push came to shove, the fit didn't make sense for Timme to come here. And he's where he needed to be. Kentucky's okay at that 4 spot. Timme is going to make a ton of money returning to Gonzaga for this year. But I will say those conversations were very real back at that point. They kind of joked about it. It kind of started out as a joke. And then like the more they talked about it, it was kind of like, well, maybe should we actually consider doing something like this? Yeah. I think that would have just, been a game changer for college basketball. But I appreciate the way it unfolded. They talked about the fantasy land scenario. It didn't work out. And then we get to see them play against each other this year. How I don't think it could have worked out any better.
Super cool. Is it Nick Smith Jr. for you in the SEC portion of the schedule? Is that the guy you're most intrigued to see?
I think so, because Nick Smith is a guy that would have been at Kentucky. We've said it on the show several times. He was ready to commit to Kentucky. He wanted to be at Kentucky from the start. I think that was something that fit-wise, I think it's better for him to be at Arkansas because he's definitely a shoot-first type of guy, and he's going to be somebody that he's going to go get his shots. And I do think he's going to shoot Arkansas out of games at times, but he's a very fascinating and fun player to watch. I think he's going to be a guy that you'll turn it on ESPN on a Tuesday night, Shawn, and Nick Smith's going to have 34 points on 16 shots and you do a bunch of crazy stuff. I'm really looking forward to that part, but I appreciate the way the roster unfolded for everybody. But yeah, Nick Smith's definitely among SEC programs, the one that I'm most looking forward to.
And you were mentioning Gonzaga earlier. Don't they play Tennessee in an exhibition? Is it an exhibition preseason?
The super secret, behind the scenes scrimmage. I think that's a possibility. And I don't know if this is out there or not, but Kansas is playing Illinois in Lawrence in their super secret scrimmage. But I think that part's going to be pretty cool too. Seeing the that actually has been announced. Tennessee has it on their website. Friday, October 28th, the inaugural Legends of Basketball Classic, Tennessee and Gonzaga. The 28th. So that's a public exhibition game.
That's a public exhibition game. Friday, October 28th at the Comerica Center in Frisco, Texas.
Now, why the hell would you not just put that on the schedule as a normal regular season game if you're going to go through those lengths?
Because you're getting it's a pay-per-view, obviously. Hold on, ppv.com. What is that?
Sounds like
pay-per-view, right?
Are you allowed to pay-per-view collegiate athletic event?
Hold on, let me look. No, it's presented live on pay-per-view. Yeah, that's what it says in the description. It's for the McClendon Foundation.
Are they raising money though?
Yep.
No, that's awesome. That's really freaking cool.
But you're getting some tape early of some of these teams against really good competition that you might not. I've not looked at everybody's schedule up until that point, but October 28th. Here it is, October 4th.
That's like 3 weeks.
Yeah, we're right here. So I was looking at Tennessee's schedule to kind of see what they had in the non-conference, and sure enough, I think it's going to be $9.99 to view that game.
Good value. I might have to dabble in that one. We got Mr. Powell says Michigan State, UCLA, U of Smell, KU, and Gonzaga. The non-conference is loaded. Absolutely. Corey 15, what SEC team do you see as the biggest threat to Kentucky winning the SEC this year?
Oh, man. So Arkansas, when it comes to talent, obviously, I think they're appealing.
I think they're going to crumble, man.
I'm going Tennessee.
Yeah.
I just think that Tennessee is what Rick Barnes has built there. I think it's going to be sustained. As long as Rick Barnes is in Knoxville, I think Tennessee is going to be to me the ultimate challenger to Kentucky and what they do when it comes to the regular season crown. I think that that's a team that's going to defend you. Zakai Ziegler back. I mean, they got guards and they got talent that I think that they're just going to defend their tails off. They're going to be physical. And I think it's obviously when you're talking about going to Thompson-Boling Arena, it's going to be one of the toughest places to play in college basketball. That hasn't translated to tournament success in the NCAA tournament for them, but regular season success in Knoxville, they don't lose there. So I think that that's probably going to be one of the stiffest when it comes to teams as far as competition that Kentucky's going to face this year. But I haven't looked. That's what I was trying to look at was the thing that you have to look at when it comes to winning the league. And Kentucky was they were on the wrong side of this last year just because of the number of times they had to play people, only getting Arkansas once and then going on the road to some other places, and then there was no return games to Rupp Arena. That kind of puts you at a disadvantage, but they get Arkansas twice, they get Tennessee twice, so that's tough in itself. You want to see and look at schedules. That's where I think that winning the league to me isn't the measuring stick anymore because the schedules aren't the same.
Mm-hmm. Am I crazy for thinking that Texas A&M is going to be a team to watch very, very closely because of their returning talent, because of the way they were screwed over late in the year with the tournament and things like that? Something tells me that Texas A&M is going to be making a serious push in that conference. But I mean, just from top to bottom, it's clearly a very talented conference. Not, again, like I said earlier, not as high on it as I usually am, but some definite threats there. And I call me crazy, but I think Texas A&M is going to be right there.
I think they're a tournament team this year. I think they're going to be a quality team on the floor. Maybe our guy Lyle Wolf is listening to us. I know that's somebody that
my guy, Lyle.
Yeah, we have conversations with Lyle when we see him, and I love what Buzz does with that program. I love his energy. The run that they had to the SEC title game a year ago to play Tennessee, that was a team that just had tired legs at the end of it. Mm-hmm. But we watched them down there in Tampa. They were one of the better teams. They deserved to get in a year ago. They didn't get in. I think that is going to fuel them, and I think that A&M is going to be right there in the hunt for an NCAA tournament bid when it comes to March.
Yeah, they're tough. All right, the big question of the evening, something that I thought that we would be able to talk about like as a fact, as a normal thing, not as a scoop thing. I was kind of tipped off earlier in the day about the possibility of Tennessee getting added to Indiana getting added to the schedule. At least as a future home and home possibility. And Andrew Luttrell just asked, what about Matt Scoop on the Indiana return? I was told that there was a chance that it was going to get announced today, but they are deep in conversations. I talked to several people throughout the afternoon that's something that they are actively discussing. And you saw Dan Dockich bring it up publicly, say that Kentucky and Indiana are talking about a series here in the very near future. I think that's going to be one of the biggest storylines in all of college basketball for the next, couple of years because of just kind of the history of the rivalry. Coach Cal will never go back to Assembly Hall. Is it going to be a neutral site, series, or is it going to be a true home and home, things like that? I think it's just a really controversial, intriguing series, Shawn, that I am dying to get the details on.
Kentucky and Indiana should be on the schedule every single year. When I was growing up as a kid, you would have Kentucky, Indiana in December. You'd have Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky, North Carolina, and it would be consecutive Saturdays majority of the time. You get to early December and you have one, get the next one, and then Kentucky, Louisville. I just think that should always be, to me, that's how the schedule was as a kid, and I'd love to see that schedule get back to some of them. We were talking about home and homes instead of the CBS Sports Classic. I'd love to see Indiana return to the schedule, Kentucky going to Assembly Hall, Indiana coming to Rupp Arena. I know back in the day you had all those neutral site games that be played at Freedom Hall, be played at the RCA Dome and stuff there in Indianapolis. But Indiana, Kentucky belongs in Assembly Hall and in Rupp Arena. Not a neutral site. It's a home and home series.
Will Cal return to Assembly Hall, Shawn? That is the question. It's not about what it should be. It's about what is going to happen. Do you see Cal ever returning to Assembly Hall?
Kentucky will at some point. I'm not sure if John Calipari will, but
he hates that place. Hates that place.
The only way that I think John Calipari returns to Assembly Hall is if Kentucky's not very good and Indiana's in the NIT and they make them go there. That's the only way. I don't know though. Maybe I'm wrong.
But man, what if it's a moment that Cal has where he goes, you know what? I'm so sick and tired of everybody talking trash. Indiana fans chirping constantly. Oh, you're never gonna go to Assembly Hall. You're too scared. You're too scared. It would mean the world to me for Cal to say, you know what? I'm going to show you how scared I am, and I'm going to go up there and I'm going to knock your teeth in, beat you by 30 points, and then I'm going to leave and I'm going to wave to the fan base as we're leaving and say, hope you enjoyed it because I'm never coming back. This is the last time. I thoroughly hope you enjoyed it. That would be just icing on the cake. And Bobby Davis asked down there, so I missed what Cal's shocking surprise to the schedule was. Can you guys discuss what it was? That was the – I mean, they're deep in discussions. I mean, this series, Shawn, is very much likely and could be announced at any point. So that's what Cal was definitely alluding to.
So if this does get announced, then I'm sitting here saying that I don't think he's going back. But maybe it is Cal. Maybe Cal has been listening to people over the last 6 or 7 months. I mean, we did see him start offering guys sooner in recruiting. He's engaging with the fan base, I think, even better than he ever has. Maybe this is another shift in it. Maybe going back to Assembly Hall. Listen, I know what happened that night, and I know that Darius Miller, you see that clip. He's laying on the floor. Indiana fans storming the floor. It was uncalled for. A lot of it was. It was dangerous. I mean, Kentucky could have lost a guy there that night. I mean, there could have been injuries. You don't know. And more so than that, fights. You don't know what's going to happen when there's people storming the floor. But Kentucky gets court stormed all the time. But nothing to that magnitude that night. It felt like I wasn't there, but watching it on TV, the top row of Assembly Hall was on the floor within 30 seconds is what it looked like. That's how crazy that environment was. But, hey, nothing would mean more than to go back there and get a win in that environment, right? And reignite this rivalry. It's too good of a rivalry for them to not play in some fashion.
And I just think Indiana fans have just got they're confused. They're delusional, thinking that it has anything to do with Cal being scared of Indiana or having anything to do with like the current trajectories of the two programs or where things are. Cal is not scared of that. He just understands the last time that he was there, his team was put in danger, and that's not, he sees it as a safety issue that he doesn't want to put his own players as kind of the father figure of these guys. He doesn't want to put his team in a dangerous situation because Indiana fans made it a dangerous situation last time it happened. Cal is not afraid to lose a freaking basketball game. He's afraid of the consequences of what would happen because Indiana fans proved last time that they can't handle a situation like that. And then we got to see what happened in the NCAA tournament when the game actually mattered, where the two teams actually were when it actually mattered most. So that's one part I'm very excited for Indiana fans too.
That was probably one of the most exciting games of that tournament run that year in 2012 because Indiana scored the ball that night.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. I mean, Kentucky was just scoring at a clip that was just unreal. I mean, what was the final? 102-90?
Something like that.
And it was just like, I don't care. I don't even have to defend you tonight. We're just going to outscore you. And, and then the last game, obviously, they played there in 2016. So it's time for Kentucky and Indiana to play again, not just in an NCAA tournament where you leave it up to the committee. Because we know if these two teams are in the tournament and if there's any chance that they're positioned somewhere near, they're going to be in that same region, that same opening weekend bracket. Take care of it yourself and just schedule the regular season and play.
E70-ish says Freedom Hall deserves the game. Indiana at Freedom Hall. I've always liked the idea of Freedom Hall. I like the cool venues, and I think that's part of the reason why I'm so frustrated with the Gonzaga. We didn't even get to talk about this. What did you think of Gonzaga putting out there today a neutral site game instead of it being a true home and home? How stupid! Like how unbelievably stupid can you be to understand that venue is less than a mile away from their campus. It is a 2,100-mile trip for Kentucky,
and you're adding fans.
To say neutral site.
And you're adding fans. You're going to have more Gonzaga fans in the building doing it this way than you would. So it's still a home game. Regardless, it's a quad one opportunity for Kentucky, whether it's neutral or whether it's road. That's the one thing about it. But having it labeled a neutral site, let's say that they fall in the net. I mean, it would change whether it's a quad one or a quad two, and it shouldn't. You're going all the way across the country, and they get on a scooter and go down the street and play this thing. Like, come on now.
No, I don't want to hear it. It's a home and home. They scheduled it as a home and home. The only reason why they wanted to do it is to bring more attention to what is most likely going to be the highest profile game of the year because of what the game means, what the hype behind the two teams, the Drew Timme versus Oscar Sheboy thing. It's going to be the highest, the most anticipated game of the season outside of maybe Kentucky, Kansas. There's a reason that they want to have more than 4,000 fans at that venue. They want it to be something that everybody goes to. It's very frustrating that these idiots up in Spokane are going, well, you guys are too scared to come to the kennel. So, just shut up. It drives me nuts.
I think that I would love to have seen it in the kennel in that environment, but it's still, you're going all the way out there for that game. That's a road game for Kentucky, no doubt about it. And it's a quick turnaround for Kentucky when it comes to the schedule. November 15th, 17th. They get home from Indianapolis and then go right back on the floor again, playing South Carolina State, and then go to Gonzaga. That's a busy week for them. And then a quick turnaround there right before Thanksgiving as well. So that's how many games there? 4 games in 8 days for Kentucky basketball fans. You'll definitely get your taste of Kentucky basketball in November. The one thing I'm interested in for next year's schedule is where they put that Gonzaga game at Rupp Arena. If they put it there in early December or what they do with it.
Yeah, I'm curious if they just kind of leave it at the same late, before Thanksgiving, end of November. If, that's when you guys got it, that's when we're going to get it back here. That would make a lot of sense. But, yeah, I think that part's intriguing.
I like it because we're going to know something about Kentucky before Thanksgiving. You get all the holiday tournaments, you get Maui, you get all the invitationals and things, feast week. You're going to know about Kentucky before feast week even arrives. Like I think that's why I like the way the schedule's lined up this year.
Yeah. We're going to start wrapping up on the schedule with Shawn. Before we get out of that and talk a little bit about recruiting, there's some recruiting news, but and we'll definitely run through those quickly, but not a whole lot has changed in the grand scheme of things. So we're not going to go 10 minutes per recruit and all that stuff. So we'll answer some of the questions that you guys have. And if you have them, make sure that you hit them in the chat. There are a couple that I see that we'll answer first, but make sure you get them in before we wrap the show up. Big Blue Madness camp out was this past weekend. Big Blue Madness is scheduled for October 14th. You get the camp out. I was there, went there, interviewed some fans about their experience, things like that. Shawn, I'll be the first to admit it was not a lot of people. Very, very small turnout, and I was pretty shocked at how I don't know if it was because it was just a one-night thing, and it used to be in previous years it was a full week. Fans take an entire week of vacation off work, and I don't know if that was a big part of it or what, but just not the turnout that I think that Kentucky was hoping for, that I think that me personally, I was expecting. That I don't think it has anything to do with the excitement of the team or, what fans think of the team or anything like that. I just think it was just kind of it got announced late, a one-night event instead of a whole week-long thing. And the Oxford trip that fans were clearly, all in on, that you could hear the Big Blue, Go Big Blue chants through the TV. I think all those things together combined for a pretty underwhelming turnout there at Big Blue Madness camp out.
Yeah, I wasn't there. I didn't get to see in person, but, seeing pictures and videos, it wasn't as big of a turnout. It was in recent years. I don't know if that football kick had a lot to do with that or what it was, but it certainly didn't line up with some of the years that they've had. But those tickets were gone just like that when they did go out to the public. So at least How quick was it when those were out? I don't remember the exact number, but they were gone pretty quickly.
It was quickly, yeah, but I will say a lot of that was the scalpers because they were put on the ticket sites right afterward for $150, $200,
Yep.
which, you know, it is what it is. Scalping is a part of, you know, the ticket business and all that, but it is, you know, it's one of those things that, yeah, I think there is something to be said that the tickets were sold as fast as they were because the event itself, as Cal said, he wants to be something that fans, you know, talk about for a month straight, that the, you know, media talks about for a month straight. He wants it to be an exciting, high-profile event, and I just think, you know, the last second put together, you know, camp out. I think they did their best. I'm not blaming UK for it at all. You know, they did their best. They did the tailgate thing, the watch party. I think that part was really cool. But, you know, just kind of is what it is. Fans, I don't think were, you know, all that invested in a one-night camp out, going out, setting up tents and doing all that stuff. So yeah, it just kind of sucks that you know, it's something that fans are always super excited about, and I enjoy covering and going to see in person, and it just kind of came and went with not a whole lot of conversation about. So very, very interesting in that regard.
Yeah, and obviously the thing that we're looking for now is what is the show that Kentucky puts on at Big Blue Madness. Like that's the thing that we're looking for here. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to be there that night. I will be at the Blue White game in Pikeville on the 22nd, but we open our middle school basketball scrimmage season, and we'll be at Tellico Plains, almost near in Chattanooga, when Kentucky's at Big Blue Madness. So you'll have to fill me in on everything that's going on that night, but I'm sure I'll be watching the replay, and hopefully Kentucky puts on a show.
Yeah, it's with the recruits that are showing up. You know, you got DJ Wagner, you got Aaron Bradshaw, you got Justin Edwards, Reed Shepard, Dink Pate, a long list of high-profile recruits. I think Carter Knox was just announced as another addition. It's going to be a high-profile recruiting event. And Shawn, get your thoughts on this. Cal's not going to bring in DJ Wagner and Aaron Bradshaw on a visit if Big Blue Madness isn't going to be something that people talk about for a month, as Cal says. Like, there's clearly a reason why he's bringing in all of his most, you know, sought after recruits for this event specifically.
This is the closing moment, really. I mean, this is your last statement that you can really make. You've made your pitch. You've made it for months now. This is where you're like, okay, this is what we're doing here. This is Kentucky basketball. This is what we're about. You would have to think that John Calipari has something pretty big up his sleeve, you know, for this event. I mean, hosting those guys and all the people that's coming in, all the talk about making Madness cool again. You need to live up to it now, because this is some big time visitors coming on campus.
Yeah, we'll wrap up the show with a couple more questions about, you know, recruiting, and there's one about Ugonna Kingsley Onyenso. I know how he's looking. I do have an update on that, and apparently things are going very well. But, you know, the question of the hour that everybody wants to know about, James Dockery asked, percent chance Cats get both Wagner and Bradshaw at this point. Shawn, I think that things are going very, very well with DJ Wagner. I do think that Kentucky, as you said, is that they're kind of putting together their closing pitch. They want this Big Blue Madness event. They want this to be the one that they say, all right, he has no reason to not commit to us anymore. I think it's big, big news that he has not scheduled a trip to Louisville Live for their kind of, you know, Midnight Madness event. I think that the fact that you're getting him on campus, you're getting him away from Louisville. Still, to this point, Shawn, this is going to be his second visit with zero scheduled to Louisville with his own grandfather there. The fact that they're not even getting a courtesy visit, I don't think you could get more optimistic about where things stand about Kentucky. I said on this show, I just don't think that this is a recruitment that Cal will lose. I think he would fight to the death for this recruitment just because of what it means and you know, the meaning behind all of it. I have never thought that DJ was going to go anywhere but Kentucky. I just didn't think Cal was going to allow it. And I think the recent development with DJ going to Big Blue Madness and Cal clearly going all in to get this thing closed out, I think it definitely says something.
Yeah, and when you see that there's not a visit to Louisville, I thought that was a big one. That was when you kind of sit back and you go, okay, like now you know Kentucky's in a really good spot in this one, and like I said earlier, this is where you apply the finishing touches. You know, this is where you kind of, you're sitting at the table. You've had the entree, now you're looking for the dessert, and then you're you're putting the cherry on top of this thing. And then this is where you get it finished. You get the commitment date for Bradshaw. We know that that's coming up right there before the early signing period and then the early time in November. You'd love to add DJ to that too and kind of have this class all wrapped up before you even get into the bulk of your season. And then if you need to add something late, then you can kind of key in on that one spot that you need or two spots that you need from the portal or returning players.
Yeah, and Aaron, I think it's still very complicated. We won't know officially. He's still in the process of scheduling some visits. He's going to go to Texas. He's going to go to UCLA, and I think that Kentucky really likes where it stands. I think they're still a little concerned about the G League. I think Mom is she hit pause on things, kind of way back when, and they're massaging that very, very delicately, just, making sure she's comfortable with this whole thing and making sure that Kentucky, that she knows that Kentucky is the place for her son. And we talked about it on the last show. We don't have to go into, the ins and outs of, the Uganda Onyenso dynamic and where things stand there. And Oscar potentially coming back, things like that. There are a lot of moving parts, but Kentucky is definitely massaging that one very delicately. And I think it's going very well. So I do like where things stand. Just keep an eye out on the G League. I think if he does go to college, I do think that Kentucky is that option for right now. There's a question. John Hand says, are we out on Ron Holland, and is Ian Jackson attending Big Blue Madness? Ian's in the process of scheduling those visits. I don't think it's been finalized for Big Blue Madness, but he's going to make his way to campus here very, very shortly. Ron Holland, interestingly enough, as much as they keep putting out the hourglass emojis, Mom saying, all this cryptic stuff and things like that, I was told on UK side that they're still all in on Ron. They're pushing for another visit, and Ron actually wants to take another follow-up visit to Lexington, which I think could definitely complicate things for sure. The longer that this drags out for a commitment, if he's talked pretty seriously about making a commitment in October, I think he's hit pause on that a little bit, where he's not just ready to wrap this thing up. I think he'd like to know where he's going to be going by the end of October, but I think it's still very complicated. Kentucky wants to get him back on campus. He wants to return. He will not be at Big Blue Madness. They tried to get him on campus, but he will not make it for that. But they are in the works of scheduling a visit for Ron, and Ron would like to return back. So it doesn't sound like a guy that's in any super big rush to make a decision, Sean. And I think that would be huge news for Kentucky. And like we had Travis Branham on a couple of weeks back, I don't think Kentucky's in the driver's seat for Ron. I think when push comes to shove, there are other schools more desperate to end him, and Kentucky adding him would be just kind of an icing on the cake deal. So I think that's going to be what ultimately pushes him elsewhere. But I do think the fact that they're still fighting tooth and nail, and Ron's still very open to that, I think it's still a pretty substantial bit of news there, Sean.
Yeah, it is. And there's a lot to play out. I mean, there's still you have a lot of this class put together. We had Reed Shepherd on here a week ago. You still got Rob Dillingham. They got Justin Edwards. So we know what they have when it comes to perimeter. They're still looking and trying to figure out what happens with DJ Wagner. You love where Kentucky's at with him. And you look at this, and there's still a lot to play out, but it could play out pretty quickly. I mean, it could play out here before Kentucky even goes to Gonzaga on November 20th, because that'll be the same week of that signing period. That's what I keep looking at. Is I like to see what Cal does with this class before you get into the season, because the more that you have shored up and kind of solidified, then you can focus all your recruiting efforts moving forward, focus on the season and the task at hand. And then, like I said, look at the portal and kind of fill your roster as needed. So I think it takes a lot off the staff if you can get it done in the fall. And I think Kentucky would love to have this thing all wrapped up by the time they really get into the season.
Yeah, I think dream scenario would be you get DJ's commitment imminent. I mean, you get that thing wrapped up as soon as possible. You get Aaron Bradshaw committed.
Yeah.
I still think it'll be complicated. I still think that he may listen to the G League. Getting him committed, I think, would be a big deal.
So you think that's a commitment spring sign, or do you think that that's a fall sign and maybe change his mind and go G League possibly?
That would be possible, but even if he signed, I don't think it would matter, because he'd just have to sign scholarship papers and then, back out in March or whatever. But even still, I think that's an ideal scenario for Kentucky because you do have, like we said last week, you have Oscar, potentially coming back, and you have Uganda Kingsley on Yenzo, and then you potentially have a 24 big reclassing or whatever. At least it's kind of like the Rob Dillingham situation where we're like, you just want him committed as that placeholder just in case something happens with DJ, just in case you get an Ian Jackson reclass, in case Rob, ducks at the last minute. You want him as that placeholder, hoping that he gets on campus. Fingers crossed he does get on campus, but it's just better to have him, kind of in your back pocket just in case. I think that's probably an ideal scenario. And then the longer it goes with Ron Holland, I definitely think that favors Kentucky. If he were to commit today, I definitely don't think Kentucky would be the choice. So you want that to go on as long as possible, and Kentucky is definitely doing what it takes to make that happen. John P. Ryan says UK offering Dink Pate soon. I do think that'll happen at some point. He's visiting for Big Blue Madness. He's a big fan of the Kentucky basketball program, the Texas ties. I think KT Turner is very serious about him, and I do think that if he continues to progress the way that he's showing, I mean, he started the summer as a top 40, top 50-ish recruit. Now he's kind of a fringe top 15, top maybe even top 10, but definitely top 15, top 20. I definitely think that he would be of Kentucky interest, and I would not be shocked at all if they offer at some point soon. I think that is close to the end. I will say Adam Hicks says, any updates on how Kingsley is doing in practice? I've heard just this week, I heard that he's been sensational, that he has really, really come along quickly. I think the thing that impresses the staff the most about him is his basketball IQ and how quickly he's kind of taking things in mentally, Sean. I think that's something that, you never know about a reclass kid. You never know about how they're going to, just adjust to that college speed, the college game, the X's and O's side of things. Apparently Uganda has been exceptional in that regard, that, basketball IQ is just at an all-time high. And they're really, really optimistic in that regard. He's still raw offensively, all the things that we've already discussed, elite defensively. But what's separating him right now is his basketball IQ and how quickly that he has kind of grasped everything from a basketball IQ perspective. And I think that makes me a little bit more optimistic that we could see him potentially a little bit earlier than maybe we anticipated.
Yeah, and he had the benefit of getting here. It wasn't as early as everyone else, but he got here in August. So it's not like he was a mid-year guy. So I think getting, Kingsley on campus when he arrived, that gave him the full fall period, late summer, early fall, those 2 months of workouts, getting in the gym and everything, getting in the weight room, and then now the official practice portion. So what I'm trying to get at is, even though he wasn't with the Bahamas, there's really no reason for him to be behind. So talking development and things that they're doing and implementing philosophy and concepts and everything that they want to do in this program, he's been able to get the bulk of it and not miss a ton of it.
John P. Ryan, Trey Johnson visiting soon. Yes, that one's a little bit more complicated. I think he's going to be very open to the pro route. I do think that he's feeling the home schools. He's visited Texas and Baylor at this point. I know he's very high on Kentucky, and Kentucky obviously likes him. Again, the Texas connection with KT Turner. I definitely think that's something to keep an eye on. But I don't know. Something tells me that by the end of the day, he's going to end up being one of the pro kids. So I like his game a lot. I think he's an exceptional scorer, especially from the intermediate and 3-point range. I love Trey Johnson's game, but I think that one's just a little bit too early to make a call either way. Matt Clary asks, and I'll ask this one for you, Sean, before we get out of here. Who are you most excited to watch play this season for Big Blue, and do you think we are the front runner for the national championship?
Ooh, who am I most excited to see play? Ooh, Jacob Toppin. I want to see if Jacob Toppin can sustain the things that he did in the Bahamas, that 3-point stroke, becoming a more efficient guy off 2 feet in the paint, a guy that I think can get to the free throw line a lot for Kentucky and defend 1 through 4. I want to see if he continues to emerge into me an all SEC defensive guy playing more minutes, and possibly an all SEC player overall and an eventual NBA draft pick. Like I think that's the guy you want to have your eye on. Been in the program 3 years now. We know the upside, the potential. This is his time. It's his year. And yes, I think that they are one of the front runners for the national championship if they stay healthy.
I agree. I think
We had a starting lineup question somewhere.
Yeah, I saw that one. And then, Andrew Luttrell says, as of today, who's your starting five? I'm going Xavier Wheeler, Kaysen Wallace, Antonio Reeves, Jacob Toppin, Oscar Sheboy. And I kind of hesitated there on Antonio Reeves because
Chris Livingston.
I heard good things about Chris Livingston.
Yep.
I think that's going to be it might be a game-by-game situation, depending on what the wing is on the other team, because they are so confident in all three of those options, CJ Livingston or CJ Frederick being the other option. I think any of those three guys, I think Kentucky's going to be like, whoever we need to go against the other guy, I think they're going to play.
And I think it all depends on role too. I think that once you get into the early season, you kind of see roles start to shake out and carve out roles. And do you want Reeves as that instant offense guy off the bench that's still going to play starter minutes? Chris Livingston off the bench as a high energy guy, a guy that can defend, a guy that can get out and run in transition and do some things, a power body. Cal has options. That's the thing. But I think the other four names that we said, I think those are locks. I think that those are definite starters: Wheeler, Wallace, Toppin, and Sheboy. It's that third piece, and it's probably the guy that's going to play the three.
Good question from Brian Huey, and let's get out of here with that one. Two more. I swear we're going to get out of here in a second. The new questions just keep rolling in. I feel inclined to answer them. Brian Huey, does Kingsley take Ware's minutes by the end of the season? No, I think that they really respect what Lance Ware brings to the table. I think they really respect his leadership and his mindset, the way he has really embraced his role. And I don't think that they understand that it's going to be a process with Ugonna, and they're not in any rush to bring him along. If he can add something, great. If not, then they're very comfortable letting that process kind of play out. I think that they really respect what Lance Ware brings to the table, and they're not going to just this late in the game let another guy kind of take over that role.
Lance is a culture guy at Kentucky, a place that's been hard to sustain guys in your program that understand your culture and what you want to do. Lance, to me, his greatest attribute and the thing that's, to me, his key part of his game is he understands his role. That's why I think Lance will continue to get minutes, and whatever those minutes are. If it's a game where you need him for 18 or 19, he's going to give it. If it's a game you need him for 5 or 6, he's going to give it, and he's going to have the exact same energy from start to finish, regardless of however many minutes he plays.
Yeah, and if it's a night that he gets 18 or 19, I think that there could be a chance that Ugonna gets 5. If there's a night that Lance is only needed for 5 and Uganna's playing well, he could give you 10, 12, 15, whatever. I think those two are going to be interchangeable, but I don't think it's going to be a scenario where Ugonna ends up averaging 20 minutes a game by the end of the year and Lance is the last guy off the bench. I just don't envision that being a scenario that works out that way. Last one, I promise. James Dockery, would you all say if Cal gets Wagner and Bradshaw, would it be Cal's best class since he's been the coach here? No, I don't. I think that it's a very good class. But as I've said on the show before, I think it's a bunch of Robins, not a bunch of Batman. I think it's guys that are very good players, but I don't think there's an elite player in this class. It's just it's just the nature of the beast. Some classes are stronger than others, and this is just a class that's a little bit weaker than we've seen in recent years. And unfortunately, I think class of 2024 is even weaker. We're going to need some 25 reclasses to step in to really make that class strengthen up a little bit, because right now it's a really, really underwhelming class. This one's a pretty okay class, and Kentucky's getting the best of those players.
That's what I was about to say. The good news is you're getting the best of the best in that class, so that means the rest of college basketball is still getting those same players in that same class, but you are getting the best. I will say this: when it comes to talent, it's not, but I think this is the class that signals Kentucky's getting back to what it wants to do in recruiting.
Yeah, because everybody's recruiting from the same pool of players. Yeah, so it's not like, oh, Kentucky's taking a bunch of bad players just for the sake of doing it. They're getting, everybody else is taking the players that are even lower on, the board. So Kentucky they're doing the right thing. And that's been a topic on the show in the past. Is it the right move for them to take as many guys in this class? I do think it is the right move. when push comes to shove, because they're getting the guys that other guys can't.
And Justin Edwards is still going to be my pick for the best player in this class. I think that dude's a star from the moment he gets at Kentucky. I really like him. I like his game. I love what his role is going to be. And I think of guys coming in, I feel like he can do a lot and impact the game in a lot of ways with that length, that athleticism, all of it.
Yeah, and I don't want, when I say that it's a class of Robin players, not Batman, like I don't want that to be taken as a slight. I see that more as guys that are understanding of what their role is and what they are as basketball players. Justin Edwards is the perfect example. That's a guy that heard every single pitch that he could have possibly wanted to hear from, schools like Tennessee, Auburn, even the schools in the Northeast that were recruiting him earlier on in the process. They all wanted him to be their superstar, come in and average 30 points a game type guy. And Kentucky said, that's not who you are. And if you want to be a real NBA player, and if you want to be an NBA star at the end of the day, you come and learn how to be a better teammate. You come in here and learn how to do the little tiny things that will maybe catapult you into being a star down the road. But right now you're not that guy, and we're going to develop you later on down the road. And I think that part in particular is, their understanding of who they are as basketball players is the best part of what this class is for Kentucky. Reed obviously fits that to a T. I think, Rob Dillingham, for what he is, I think he might be the outlier of those guys that thinks he's, a little bit further along than he might be. But, I still think that's going to work. It's just a lot of complementary pieces, I think. And I think that's what makes it a strong class, but it's definitely not Cal's best, just in terms of overall talent. Well, that's it. I think that wraps it up. I promise that would be our last one, even though more questions are rolling in. Come back next Tuesday. I promise that we'll answer all of those. We've gone already a little bit long. We've had a blast tonight. Appreciate our guy Will Martin coming on from Missouri Western to talk about that exhibition matchup. Sean, before we get out of here, message from our friends at Athletic Greens. Our next partner has a product I use literally every day. I started taking AG1 because I had ramped up my daily workouts and eating a cleaner diet, and Athletic Greens was the perfect complement to my efforts in getting healthy. The thing is, I didn't want a chalky, nasty, bitter supplement that tasted like grass clippings. I wanted something I genuinely enjoyed with a mild tropical taste. It's a drink I actually look forward to each morning. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you are absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help start your day right. The special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and aging, all of the things. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. It contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, while still tasting good. It supports better sleep quality and recovery, supports mental clarity and alertness. You're investing in an all-in-one nutritional insurance with over 7,000 5-star reviews. Athletic Greens is the thing for you. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop and a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/pilgrim. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/pilgrim, PILGRIM, to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Shawn Smith, that wraps up this edition of Sources Say. Where can fans find your work?
You can find my work at gobigbluecountry.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at GBBCountry.
Find me on Twitter as well at Jack Pilgrim KSR. Reach out to me via email at jpilgrim@KentuckySportsRadio.com. With that, we'll be back next time for the Jam Packed Sources Say podcast. We will see you then.